What's up? What's happening? Nobody knows back here again. Um, we're scrolling through some more news clips. I watched 2 minutes of this already, but I'm gonna start it over. Just to, I ain't really want to do it because it's 17 minutes long. Okay, and I know y'all don't, want to hear all that. Then I got to, put my input in it, but unfortunately, that's what's going to have to happen. So if you don't like it, just skip through. I'm gonna be perfectly real with you. That's why I don't say that. Like, comment, subscribe. I don't say all that because it's like y'all like it, y'all like it. You subscribe, you subscribe. If you comment, you comment. I mean, what else I'm gonna say? Well, just force y'all to do it. But so I'm gonna go ahead and watch this and give my opinion because from what I see, hold on. From what I see, it say ICE to deploy tactical units in major U.S. cities as protests spread, and this is by NBC News, and this was posted 1 hour ago. And the crazy part about it is, I knew it was coming. Just from the last video I watched, I'm like, eventually, this stuff going to end up spreading out, and then look at this, like, but about to see what's up, and like I said, get my honest, unbiased opinion. All right, let's go.
Online nobles in Washington, as the White House warns of additional military deployments in American cities, with pockets of unrest persisting in Los Angeles. ICE preparing to.
And by the way, this is in New York, Chicago, Milwaukee, Austin, Texas, and Denver.
Deploy tactical units to major U.S. cities and protests against the administration's immigration crackdown spreading across the country. At the White House today, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt doubled down on the president's harsh rhetoric.
The mob violence is being stomped out. Criminals responsible will be swiftly brought to justice. And the Trump administration's operations to arrest illegal aliens are continuing unabated. The position of the Democrat Party is that the federal government is not allowed to enforce our laws and to arrest and deport illegal alien criminals. They're attempting to use a violent mob as a weapon against their own constituents to prevent the enforcement of immigration law. This is deeply un-American and morally reprehensible.
Now, we should note there is no evidence that Democrats or any specific organization are behind the protests in Los Angeles or elsewhere. And as we've been noting, the pockets of unrest have so far been contained to a small area in downtown Los Angeles. But the comments came a day after President Trump, in front of thousands of soldiers at Fort Bragg, vowed to liberate Los Angeles from what he described as an invasion.
Under the Trump administration, this anarchy will not stand. We will not allow federal agents to be attacked, and we will not allow an American city to be invaded and conquered by a foreign enemy. I'll say it loudly and clearly. They better do something before it's too late. Very simply, we will liberate Los Angeles and make it free, clean, and safe again.
A defense official tells NBC News that 700 Marines are mobilized and in the Los Angeles area, but are not on the streets yet. But they could be sent out as early as today. A curfew ordered by Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass will remain in effect for a second night tonight for portions of downtown. The LAPD says it made nearly 200 arrests yesterday, more than the total arrests made on the previous 3 days, in what the police chief is calling a concerning escalation in unlawful and dangerous behavior. In a nighttime address, California Governor Gavin Newsom blamed the president for the continued unrest, while issuing this warning to other cities.
California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. The founding fathers, they didn't live and die to see this kind of moment. It's time for all of us to stand up.
I am recording this. Fair warning.
In New York, meanwhile, the NYPD says it made dozens of arrests and anti-ICE protests in lower Manhattan. In Denver, police say they've made 17 arrests outside the state capitol as our NBC affiliate reports that police deployed smoke and pepper balls to disperse the crowd. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott says that he's deploying the Texas National Guard to locations across the state ahead of protests planned in San Antonio. Meanwhile, NBC News has exclusive reporting that ICE is preparing to deploy its special response teams to 5 cities and regions run by Democrats: Seattle, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, and the Washington, D.C. area. NBC News correspondent David Noriega joins us again from Los Angeles. Also with me is NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley, NBC News chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander, and NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Cubey. David, let's start with you. We've been checking in with you all week. Describe what the mood is like there today compared to what it was like this time yesterday.
Well, Ryan, things are actually substantially
That
calmer
person's
here
speeding.
today, right now, as compared to exactly this time yesterday. When I spoke to Gabe at 1 o'clock local yesterday, there was a crowd of about 100 to 200 protesters right behind me. They were spilling into the street. Tensions were ratcheting up with not only the National Guard troops and federal agents that are stationed in front of the federal building there behind me, but also with LAPD, which subsequently moved in and cleared this road of protesters. This has been the trend line. The number of protesters coming out, the sort of degree of confrontation that they've had with police has been steadily going down, and I attribute that very clearly, based on my observations on the ground, to the major crackdown by local and state and county law enforcement, which has been throwing a ton of resources into this, putting lots of police on the ground, and making them, very ready, very quick to use non-lethal force to control and disperse these crowds. The latest escalation in that law enforcement crackdown, of course, being Mayor Bass's curfew last night and these, hundreds of arrests that happened overnight, right?
And you mentioned those arrests, LAPD saying that they arrested nearly 200 people yesterday. That's more than the total arrests that they made Saturday and Sunday and Monday. What do you attribute the sudden uptick to?
Look, I think the dynamic here is one where Mayor Bass and the governor and the relevant law enforcement agencies are continuing to try to show to the federal government, to everybody else, that they have this situation under control. And again, from what I've seen, they very much do have the situation under control. Local, state, and county law enforcement are far outnumbering protesters on the street at this point. I've also noticed a bit of a shift in the tactics of the protesters themselves. They're becoming somewhat less confrontational, more eager to avoid law enforcement rather than come into direct contact with them. Yesterday, for example, there was a pretty large, maybe 200 to 300 people march around the various streets of downtown, moving pretty far away from this collection of federal buildings where most of the protests have been happening over the last few days, but they were moving very fast, very clearly trying to avoid law enforcement. And again, just a reminder, 200 to 300 people, that's my estimate, is still several, the number of police that I've heard from some law enforcement commanders on the ground is over 1,000. So we're still talking about a number of protesters that is dwarfed by the amount of police. One thing to note, though, Ryan, is that, as we move through this week, the protest seems to be reduced to a pretty hardcore of committed protesters. This weekend, we may see some much bigger mobilizations, not just here, but around the country, Ryan. That's the expectation.
Okay, David Noriega on the ground. As always, David, if something pops up there, please let us know, and we'll bring you on immediately. Julia, let's go to you now. What can you tell us about what we're learning now? This is just coming in, the deployment of any federal surveillance programs in Los Angeles.
That's right. We have heard reports from our affiliate on the ground and others, David, our colleague Jacob Soboroff, about predator drones that were reported in the area. Now DHS is actually posting to X footage from those drones, confirming that they are from Customs and Border Protection's air and marine operations. And I just got off the phone with Jacob Soboroff, who said that he saw a CBP labeled Black Hawk in the area where he is right now, outside of Los Angeles. So this is part of CBP, Customs and Border Protection. They have what's called the air and marine operations, and those helicopters, I've been in them, are typically used for rescue recovery efforts along the border. They fly through really rough terrain where migrants may be trying to evade Customs and Border Protection. They can find them there, and oftentimes they're rescuing people who are in distress. That's how they've used them previously. In this case, they're using them for surveillance, that Black Hawk that Jacob saw, and the surveillance footage from those drones is quite striking, not only of where ICE may go to make arrests, but also being able to surveil the protests there. So it's raising new questions about the surveillance being done by federal law enforcement in that area.
And you have some new reporting on ICE's next targets. What do we know about those cities, and how soon could those operations begin?
Yeah, that's right. Well, we understand from the president yesterday, he answered Garrett Hake in the Oval Office, that he does plan to replicate what you're seeing in Los Angeles across the country. And one way we're seeing that play out already is that ICE is getting ready to deploy these special response teams. Think of that as like a SWAT team for ICE. Those are people who could go out with long guns, Bearcats, tracked and armored vehicles. They're trained for situations where they might be making a mass number of arrests, like workplace enforcement, or in cases where they think they might encounter a threat. They were used in the raid on Diddy's home last year. If you remember the footage of that, quite striking when you saw really the SWAT team go in. They're not typically used in cases where you might be making arrest of non-criminal, non-threatening migrants in communities like Los Angeles. In fact, usually federal law enforcement tries not to use that escalated tactic unless they are prepared for their response. And of course, it was those military tactics that prompted some of the protesters staying in Los Angeles starting last week. And so now they're prepared to use those in 5 cities across the United States. As we understand it from our reporting so far, those include Seattle, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, and the D.C. area. That's not to say, Ryan, that we couldn't see arrests in other areas. We've already seen arrests in Omaha, Nebraska, starting yesterday. But we know that at least in those cities, which we have to point out are sanctuary cities run by Democratic leaders, those are the areas where they are preparing to deploy those types of resources.
Okay, Julia Ainsley, thank you for that. Let's move now to Peter Alexander at the White House. And Peter, what have we learned about the Trump administration's apparent willingness to escalate these military deployments?
Well, Ryan, I think Julia detailed it well. We have heard from the president himself talking about his willingness to crack down on what he describes as protests. The White House later clarifying he's referring specifically to violent protests if they are to arise in other cities around the country right now, like they point to what's taking place in L.A. at this time. Specifically, what we're going to be keeping a close eye on is whether the president is willing to go further and invoke the Insurrection Act here, which would allow these federalized members of the military, the National Guard, the Marines, as well as other service members, to use force and to make arrests themselves. That would be a significant step. Already the steps we've seen have been dramatic. This is the first time, as we've been covering in 50 years, 5 decades, at least, that the U.S. government, the president, has federalized American troops in a state against the wishes or without a request from that state's governor, in this case, Gavin Newsom. We should note we heard from Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, a bit earlier today. There was one particularly fiery exchange where she made the argument that a majority of the arrests, the majority of the protesters there have been engaged in violent activity. Notably, she said, nearly 400 people have been arrested who were...
My name is Arnau. I'm an artist.
You know, it sounds like he really trying to, think of what to say.
I had my...
Undocumented immigrants in this country. We heard, though, from a report...
It's like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Like, that's how he was talking. I'm just saying. I mean, I'm going to play it back a little bit, but that's how he was talking.
A state against the wishes or without a request from that state's governor, in this case, Gavin Newsom. We should note we heard from Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, a bit earlier today. There was one particularly fiery exchange where she made the argument that a majority of the arrests, the majority of the protesters there have been engaged in violent activity. Notably, she said, nearly 400 people have been arrested who were undocumented immigrants in this country. We heard, though, from a reporter in the room reminding her that there have been thousands of people participating here, so it's not entirely clear. So it is clear, I think we should say, that the president has been amplifying the size and scope of this when we know, in fact, it's isolated to a small area, but certainly this is a place that he feels like he has the political advantage, and one where White House aides and other allies of the president have communicated that he is more than willing to lean in. Ryan?
Yeah, and maybe expand on that a little bit. I mean, how far is the president willing to go, considering, as you point out, they seem eager to lean in to these political issues? Is this just the beginning?
Yeah, it does certainly appear to be that way right now. We heard from Tom Homan, the so-called border czar, who has said in recent interviews that the White House right now, the administration is, in his words, opening up the aperture. You'll remember early on throughout the campaign, the president said the focus would be on violent criminals, the worst of the worst. But already we're seeing some pictures from around the country where they're clearly opening up that aperture, in Homan's words, echoing the words of Stephen Miller, one of the president's top aides here, where they're trying to bring up their numbers to as many as 3,000 arrests and deportations each day. That's well ahead of the numbers they've been seeing early on, and it does speak to one of the unique challenges they're facing right now, and what is really fundamental to the debate over what we're witnessing right now, where the focus is on those individuals who have committed crimes, who are violent criminals, or individuals who have served, who have worked in the United States for years, perhaps in restaurants or in fields, and the only crime they have committed is entering into the United States illegally. Right.
Okay. Peter Alexander at the White House, thank you for that. Let's now go to our national security correspondent, Courtney Cubey, who is joining me now with more on the role the military could play in all of this. Do we have any new details, Courtney, about how the Marines could be a part of what's happening in Los Angeles?
Yeah, we do, Ryan. So we know that these 700 Marines who are based at 29 Palms in California were moved in or mobilized to closer into the LA area earlier this week. But since then, they haven't actually been on the ground as part of this Task Force 51. In fact, they're still back again in the LA area, but not forward and actually deployed. And they're undergoing some very basic training to get ready for this mission. That includes things like learning about the standard rules of force. Ryan, you may have heard the term rules of engagement. That's what the military talks about when they're overseas. When they're here domestically, they refer to them as rules of force. It's the left and right limits about what these Marines will be allowed to do while they are under Task Force 51, if in fact they do end up on the streets of LA. So far, what we know, they will be tasked with protecting federal buildings and personnel. They always have the inherent right of self-defense. But Ryan, according to a couple of sources familiar, we are also told that the Marines could be used to protect ICE personnel while they're on raids. That could include even driving some of those ICE agents to these immigration raids, Ryan.
And I assume this is not exactly what Marines are normally trained to do. What are Marines trained to do and not to do?
Yeah, it's a very different mission for U.S. Marines. Look, Marines consider themselves war fighters. We hear the word out of even Secretary of Defense every single time we hear from him. The concern here is not that they can't handle the situation. The concern is that they are trained in a very different way than someone like the Los Angeles Police Department or DHS would be to handle situations like this. It's everything from just the language that they use while they are on a mission. Those are the kinds of things that they are trying to iron out before they put these Marines on the street. The real concern in here is some very simple misunderstanding that's based on nothing more than a difference in the training could lead to a situation that puts Marines in a dangerous situation or even in a place that it could put them in an even unlawful situation, Ryan.
And perhaps innocent people caught up in it as a result of it as well. And you mentioned the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. He was back on Capitol Hill for the second day. What were your biggest takeaways from his testimony today?
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about the deployment in LA. He didn't provide a whole lot new detail, but I was really struck by his acknowledgement that this could expand out from just LA to other places in the country. He didn't talk a whole lot more about the overall price tag. We learned yesterday it was $134 million for these first 60 days. We don't know how much longer, frankly, it could go, but he was defiant when discussing this issue, saying that, in fact, the president has the authority to do this. He was pressed by Senator Baldwin, though, and I was really struck by the exchange because she asked him, look, we know what authority the president is bringing in the California National Guard. It's under his Title 10 authority. Why are the Marines there? Under what authority? He couldn't answer that. He said he would get back to her with an answer later.
And this, of course, all 3 days before the Saturday military parade here in Washington. What more do we know about that parade?
Yeah, so we're still, the big headline out of this continues to be the potential price tag here, Ryan. Officials still believe it could fall somewhere in the $45 million range. Right now, Army officials, and specifically Army engineers, are pretty confident that the damage to D.C. streets, you see some heavy vehicles here, including tanks that are expected to be out on the streets of D.C. for this parade on Saturday. They're confident that the measures they are taking to mitigate any damage are going to be effective. It's simple things like putting down steel plates. They're redoing some of the treads. You can see on the tanks there, they're putting a new rubber tread on them. The hope is that those kinds of things will stop some damage to D.C. streets, or at least mitigate that. Right now, there is an estimate for up to $16 million that this could cost D.C. in damage.
Okay, Courtney Cubey on Capitol Hill today for a change. It was nice having you there today, Courtney. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, first off, I want to talk about that reporter because dude, act like he was stuck on words. It was like he slipped up. He was like something about them being violent, and then it was like he just started talking real slowly. Then like you could see his face expression, like oh wait a minute, dang, I said violent. They acted violent. Then I said Democratic led cities. So that's why. Some people would think it's Democratic-led protests, violent protests, because it's in Democratic cities, but that ain't always the case. So, yeah, I'm gonna say y'all wrong there. You just can't blame the governors or nothing there just because, like I said in the last video, a group of people want to act out. For real, what I see happening is that it is going to spread out. Eventually, it's going to spread out to Republican states too. And when it spread out, it's going with the Marines and the military men not really having no training over that, whatever. It's going to be something that's going to hit the fan where I feel like, just like they said in LA, the protesters are throwing cedar blocks and stuff. I think eventually it's going to be one false move on one end, on one of their ends. It's going to be somebody that's probably going to throw something and hit an officer and kill him, where it's just going to be a massive, all right, well, you know what, we tired of this, and they start shooting. Or they going to get overwhelmed. The military going to get overwhelmed with trying to keep everything under control, and they just gonna start shooting people. And unfortunately, Trump may just agree with him, just because of the fact like all y'all had to do was just leave. And I'm not saying that he's right in that, because he'll be wrong for saying that. But at the same token, you can't send somebody somewhere and they're not trained on these type of situations, and when they get overwhelmed, they just gonna start going off, and then once that start going off, then people gonna want to start attacking them, and then that's when it's gonna start happening in every city, where it's basically gonna be the military versus the people, and then that's when it's gonna be a good amount of people wiped off this earth, and they gonna end up like basically like the government rather. They gonna end up just like, all right, the whole United States is on lockdown. Everybody had a curfew. Unless it's federal workers. If you ain't no federal worker, you fuck. You better, McDonald's better close early, something. So it's like that's what I see it leading to, and that's why I was saying in the last video, like if you expect to come back here and try to have a better living and everything, you could just have patience and wait. And that's the thing with a lot of people. They don't want to have patience and just wait on and having faith on, the better things to come, versus just, no, I want it right now. Like, I want to stay here. I'm already here. I don't want to leave. It's like, no, like, you're literally ruining it. Like, they already got rid of, the most violent people. I'm talking about, like, the people who was going online, talking about going to war with Chicago gangs and all that, trying to jump up in abandoned houses and stuff. Like, that's, those type of people is gone. Now y'all are showing that y'all are kind of the same, because things don't go y'all way. Y'all flip out. The only difference is they do it because they want to. That's the only difference. Bad people with bad intentions do them type of things because they want to. Here you feel like you need to. You feel like if I don't do it, they're not going to hear my voice. No one's going to take up for us. Like I get it. I do. If anything, like I say, if I was in their shoes, I would have just left. Now, in this perspective, if I had to try to stand up for myself, I would have stayed a day. I would have tried to protest for a day. But honestly, once I see that day is going bad, where I see people breaking stuff and looting and throwing cedar blocks at the police and everything, like I would have left. Because at that point, I'm like, stuff ain't gonna get established this way. Like, if anything, make something like a protest, a real protest. Like, let's see, Martin Luther King was walking, and everything, the Million Man March and stuff, that type of stuff. If anything, do the Hands Across America or something. You know, do something like that. You get what I'm saying? Like, just so show your humane side. Don't show the side that's like, oh, we want to be destructive until we get our way. No, literally, like, if I was a governor, or whatever, show me other. If y'all show me something other than violence that y'all want to be here, I may change my tune. I may change up some things, but you just acting up and acting violent and then evidently we supposed to have a patriot as a president. So it's like you waving the Mexican flag ain't gonna help no better. If anything, y'all should put like try to hook some American flags on y'all backs. Everybody sit down like in a kumbaya state, sit all on the sidewalks, hold hands and sing or pray or something. That would show them like, no, like we can't kick these type of people out, because it's like, look at what they doing. Like, they being sincere. They actually trying to, you know what I'm saying, show us they want to be here. Like, they showing us, like, you know, well, showing the president. They don't gotta show me shit. Showing the president like we really want to be here. We would, you know what I'm saying, just please, you know what I'm saying, try to think of something else other than just sending us back home. That's what you're supposed to do. Instead, you guys are up here just like, we gonna loot. We gonna throw this at the cops. We gonna say fuck you. We gonna fight them. We gonna wave our own flag. We don't need to wave no American flag. We need to show them where we from. I'm going to tell you this. It may be some Crips or Bloods that don't like each other, but I guarantee you now they ain't about to go over there waving a flag. I'm just saying. You know what happened last time that happened? Back then? And I ain't even that old. But, hey, you know what happened last time, right? I'm pretty sure y'all done seen you know, the rapper Snoop Dogg and everything, Crips and all the other stuff, how they was acting back then, killing each other over a flag, over a bandana, over a colored bandana. And you think that, you know, this is different from that. No, it's not. It's not different. You are literally in the United States and you're waving a Mexico flag like you're proud of your country. But yet you're asking for a chance. That's wrong. That's not something that you do. Like I said, hook some small American flags on y'all backs or something. Put it in y'all hair, something. Wear the colors of it. Sit down and on the sidewalks or something, or on the street curves. Hold hands, hug each other. Put, you know what I'm saying, what they call it, like chicken wing y'all self around each other. You get what I'm saying? Like put your arm around each other. Like, do stuff like that and just sing, harmonize with each other and stuff. That's love. Go off the frequency of love. Stop going off the frequency of hate, revenge, and payback. It's not gonna go well. So that was my opinion. I'm having faith. That's why I don't really, you know, watch stuff, this type of stuff, and just watch stuff in general, because I just be having faith in everything. I have faith in God. I have faith in the Father. I look for the Father to let His will be done. So whatever happens. That's to, you know what I'm saying, that's my own opinion. That's my own understanding. That's how I'm understanding it from my logic. But it's just, I just feel like I need to watch this type of stuff and come to y'all and tell y'all, like, this is not the way to go. This is not the way to go. This is about to go bad. And like I said in the last video, it's going to ruin it for everybody. Y'all keep doing stuff like that, they're going to want to kill us. They're going to want to kill you. And you will be the first ones killed because you're out there. You're doing all this. You're not actually looking at the long game of it. You're looking at the short game. You want your way. And your way ain't going to always happen because look at what's going on. It's a whole country you're going against. And that military parade. Ain't that supposed to be on Trump's birthday? Sheesh. But anyway, like I said, I'm just being real, unbiased, and honest. And hopefully y'all respect my opinions like I respect y'all's. So, nobody knows.